fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. Will end. This is designed to be a permanent cessation of hostilities. What is left of Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations will not be allowed, well, I emphasize, will not be allowed to threaten the security of Israel again.
And this afternoon from the White House Rose Garden, President Biden announced a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon. It'll take effect overnight, and Israel will withdraw remaining forces over the next 60 days. Hezbollah, backed by Iran, they attacked Israel just days after the October 7th attack by Hamas against Israel. The U.S. and France brokered the deal. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu supports the ceasefire, adding the war will not end, though, until northern Israelis can safely return home. And the president added that he is hoping for a ceasefire in Gaza. A lot to discuss. Cecile Shea from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs joins us now with some perspective. Thank you very much for being with us, Cecile.
My pleasure to be here today.
So let's talk about this. Take us through the behind-the-scenes negotiations that brought us to the agreement announced today.
Well, I was looking at Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, during some of his press availabilities the last 24 hours, and he looks exhausted. He is just worn out, and he has worked so hard. So I'm very happy for him and for French President Macron that they were able to reach this ceasefire. Now, something that should be said is this seems to be a reiteration of the ceasefire that ended the Israel-Lebanon war in 2006. And that ceasefire has been violated by both sides numerous times over these 15, 20 years now. So, you know, there's still a lot to be seen. President Biden said some things about this will end all hostilities. You know, there will probably still be some hostilities, hopefully, though not the kind of incredible violence that we saw, for instance, today in Beirut and that we've seen against some Israeli towns over the last year or so.
Yeah, I want to talk about the big picture in a minute, but first, there have been reports that Israel sort of made this agreement as a gift to the incoming administration here. There have been reports to that effect. What are your thoughts about the validity and the significance of that? This was President Biden's deal along with France.
I mean, you know, I don't quite understand the logic of that, why it would be a gift to President Trump, unless President Trump perhaps made a phone call and said something like, I can't deal with this on top of everything else. You need to settle it.
Well, it appeared they did talk at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. That would, I mean, you know, he might have. I think that the bigger impact in terms of Netanyahu is really two and a half fold. First of all, he has 100,000 or so of his voters who had to leave the northern areas of Israel over a year ago, and they just are desperate to go home. And he's under a lot of pressure from those folks to get some kind of peace and security in the north so that they can go home, which means the missile stopping. So that's one of the things. He has domestic political pressure. And the second thing is he recognizes that he has to look to the rest of the world like he is willing to deal and willing to come to a peace agreement, and that the problem in Gaza is with Hamas. Now, there was an interesting statement a little while ago with some Americans behind the scenes saying that Netanyahu is saying we gave him carte blanche to attack Lebanon again if there are any violations. And that was not what we said. We were talking about more serious violations. So we'll see what happens over the next 60 days. You know, the big question is whether Lebanon can actually ensure that Hezbollah pulls back from the Israeli border. That's their responsibility. There will be some UN forces there as well. There already are. But really, it's at this point now over in Hezbollah and Lebanon's court to make sure that Hezbollah pulls back from the border, 18 miles from the border, as is in the agreement. We'll
see how that goes in the next 60 days. You mentioned Hamas there. President Biden did answer questions today in the announcement about the other war front that Israel is fighting with Hamas. Of course, you know, all of these actions are joined together here, but how does this factor in, and what do you expect? Because there are hostages that are still being held there in Gaza.
So there was a ceasefire resolution in the UN Security Council today, and the U.S. vetoed it. And the U.S. vetoed it because there was no call on Hamas to immediately release the remaining Israeli hostages. the tragedy in all of this is you have millions of innocent people in Gaza who didn't ask for any of this, who are suffering terribly. There's hunger. I used to live in Israel. It gets cool in the winter. They're cold now. They don't have heat. They are living in shelters. Their homes are destroyed, and they are suffering because these two sides and clearly President Biden at this point blames Hamas more. I think there's plenty of blame to go around. Have not been able to come to a cessation of hostilities or at least find a way to get assistance to those folks. So I mean, there just has to be some kind of resolution, but I can't say I'm particularly optimistic right now. But Netanyahu made some sounds today that he thought that perhaps this will push Hamas to deal. We'll see.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. This is obviously a complicated topic, but we're grateful to have your insight. So thank you very much, Cecile Shea from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Take care and have a nice holiday.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.